I think that we can all agree that we find ourselves being reduced, our personalities, our uniqueness, everything that kind of makes us us, being reduced and boiled down and then even diluted through the medium of a phone screen or a computer. And I think that that's something that digital photography plays into very heavily. And it's something that can allow us to express ourselves even through that starting to dilute medium. I think that it's really important to be able to show personality and show uniqueness and show all those characteristics I just mentioned through portraiture. And today I'm hoping to explain to you guys how to better curate a portrait of yourself, to better represent yourself or more creatively represent yourself. There are a couple things you can do prior to shooting the shot that are really important that'll make the portrait stand out a lot better among others. And there's a couple things you can do afterwards. I'm going to talk about both of those. So starting off, before you shoot the shot, you want to frame it up. There's no amount of editing, there's no amount of post-processing that you can do that can make an image that was shot poorly look good. So framing in this instance of the photo that I have behind me is what is called the rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds is a grid that lays over the photograph kind of like 3 lines horizontally, 3 lines vertically. And as you can see, I tried to in this image, with the 3 lines being the sand, the ocean, and then the top of Laurel Rock. All those 3 lines are bisected by the subject standing vertically, which cuts the plane of each one of those 3, drawing your attention to it. All right, that's one form of the framing that you can work on. Natural framing, in this instance, also worked out using the rule of thirds, which was Laurel Rock, which slopes down to the right towards the subject, and the beach that slopes up to the right in the way of the subject, with the horizon line being parallel, guiding the viewer's eye to the right side of the screen, towards the subject. The third thing is leading lines, and that plays right back into the natural framing, which the leading lines is like I had said before, where it drifts down and it brings your eye to the right side of the frame towards the subject. Those 3 things, the rule of thirds, the natural framing, and the leading lines, can come in any form, with respect to the rule of thirds being confined to the rule of thirds. Natural framing can be shooting through a rock, shooting through a hole in the ice. It can be any sort of thing that confines your subject to the viewer's eye. Leading lines can be the same thing, right? In this instance, I have a rock in the distance leading down to her shoulder, and the sand sweeping up to her legs, so it confines your view. The second thing that's really important to keep in mind when you're looking for portraiture is the aperture. The aperture is, if you would all like a demonstration, hold your finger really close to your eye. You can see how everything else behind it is blurry. The camera works in the same way. And rather than your finger close to your face, it's a subject. And the blurriness is what isn't really necessary to the rest of the image. Right? The subject's what's important, so that's why she's in focus. But the aperture allows you to separate yourself from the rest of the scene. Something that iPhones and other phones alike are starting to get into now is the imitated aperture, where they can blur out the backgrounds artificially. But regular cameras, DSLRs, can also do that, just in the nature of the lens. But that's really important because, once again, it isolates the subject and it focuses the viewer on the person you shoot the portrait of. And the third point is when it comes down to editing. And the editing process is something that happens afterwards. It's not obviously something you do before you shoot the photograph. It's something that when you have the photo and you're not necessarily happy with every single aspect of it, you can go and you can put it in a post-processing software like Lightroom, or even your phone's just standardized photo editing software, or even Instagram or your preferred media of posting. They generally provide one. you can toss it into that photo editing software, and from there you can mess with some key things. Those key things being making it light. Because the worst thing would be an underexposed portraiture, because you lose the details and definition in the subject, and that's something that's incredibly pivotal when you're shooting a picture of someone. You don't want to lose their details. So when it comes to light, it's really important to keep the light up and then present. The tones are also incredibly important to match the scene. You don't want a warm winter, and you don't really want a cold beach unless it fits the scene, right? Unless it was a cold, stormy day at the beach, then it's fine. But if it's a hot winter scene where it's all snowing and whatnot, and you have really warm tones, it's not going to look good. So I'll show you what this image started out as. This was the image shot. This is out by Morro Rock. It was an overcast day. But it was a really nice day, and it was a happy memory, and I wanted the final image to portray that. So I took the image as it was, right? You guys can see it's dark, and the first step was to lighten it up. So I could see all the details, I could see what I wanted to work with and what I wanted to pull out. She has really nice coloration in her hair, and I knew the sand looked really nice because that was the only plane out of my thirds that was in focus. So I wanted to bring out the definition in that, bring out the definition in her hair, and leave everything else kind of to the wayside. Past that, I wanted to move to, like I was saying, the tone, which it was a warm day, it was at the beach, and you can't tell that it's cloudy because the background is blurred out due to the aperture, and I wanted the audience to get that warm feeling, and that's why I decided to finish with. So I hope that using these kind of tips and whatnot, you guys can piece together and better portray yourselves through social media or whatever facet you're posting yourself to.
Okay, Jesse, how'd it go?
Rough, man.
What?
2 nights of no sleep is, I'm pulling straws right now.
Okay. In your research, anything you find that you didn't know before, sort of further advance your knowledge?
There are a lot of people who have done a lot of research on how smartphone front-facing cameras affect the way you look, and it's like proven that you are uglier in that front-facing camera than you are in real life. So that was a little relieving.
Your front face, so when you take them like
right,
this.
when you take a picture of yourself like that, the distortion is so high because the lens is so small and it has to fishbowl to get that wide of an angle that it distorts all sorts of it. But the phone itself, part of the software, is it tries to compensate based on facial recognition, and it doesn't always work, not even close. And there's just small things that you would just never know are off, and you're just like, oh, guess I'm ugly. Yeah. Right, and